Hey guys, Kicking Pilates. So it all starts with neutral hips. If you don't know what neutral hips are, you've been in that position before, you found them, you just didn't stay in it, sitting, standing, breathing, walking, everything. So that's the whole point, this whole entire website. Not only technique, but you'll never get your technique unless you get your hips right. So it's real simple, you've done it before. Everybody's on a skateboard, right? Would you skateboard with your leg hyperextended, your butt sticking out? Do you feel like you got a good center of gravity? Probably wouldn't go good on a skateboard, right? So most people bend into that knee. They scoop their tailbone so they have a little bit more stability. You notice you have more stability when you activate the back sides of your legs. And then you give it a little of that and you feel nice and balanced, right? But if you switch it around, go back to that hyperextended knee, you stick your butt out, it's not going to go so well. You're probably going to have a couple stitches, right? All right, so what are we going to do? I'm going to give you a couple ways we can find that neutral hip position. So, I'll take you down here. So the way human beings are built, just normal ranges of motion. Not everybody has to, when they kick and punt, get their foot behind their head. So a normal range of motion in a human being, when you're laying down on the ground, you should be able to get this knee up to about 120, okay? So it's very simple. When you're sitting, when you're laying down, when you're standing, at any time your hips should be scooped underneath your butt enough so if you just stop and lift your knee, you should be able to get it up your waist, right? So how do a lot of kickers kick? They deactivate the back sides of their legs, they stick their butt out, they hyperextend their knees, and they only use the front half of their body. So that's exactly what Pilates teaches you how to do from head to tail. So we're just going to cover this 120 today in sitting, standing, and laying down. So real quick, so you already saw me, this is normal range of motion, right? You're supposed to lay your other leg down, get this one up here, right? But how does everybody stand? The way they stick their butts out. So I called it anterior pelvic tilt. It's just a common name, but what I like to do, to set an example, I like to lay down on the ground, stick my lower back, my arm underneath my lumbar above my butt, and what that's going to tilt my hips forward. It's very hard for people to know if they have anterior pelvic tilt because you can't actually see your hips. That's what I'm trying to do in the site. I'm teaching you what you can't see. So if I relax and I stick my butt out and I let my ribs come up and I bring this right knee up, all of a sudden I can only get to about 90, right? So when I take my hand out, you should be able to see a big hole under there, right? So what I want to do is I want to do the opposite. I want to get my ribs close to my hips. I don't want to be able to get my hand under there. When I do that, real easy, all right? So let's go over to sitting real quick. Take you right here. So what do we do all day? We sit all day long in terrible positions. We'll talk about sitting, extended in some other videos. So same thing. The majority of us, when we sit down, we don't realize it. And remember, we can't see our hips, so it's impossible unless after this video it's going to change a lot of things. But most of the time we just sit at work all day. Or most guys are in high school. You just sit and sit and sit. You only get a couple hours with your football team, so you should be stretching and warming up more, but that'll take up half the practice if you're actually supposed to do it right. So that's where we are. So real simple, just like we were on the ground, this knee should be able to come up to my chest. So a little way I like to show this anterior pelvic tilt. I want you to stick your hand out, try to touch your beer belly to your hand, leaving your beer belly out to your hand. Try to bring your knee up, and you'll see, whoop, it goes, right around 90, a little bit more. So what I'll do now, I'm going to push myself up, and I'm going to scoop my tailbone. I'm going to take my tailbone, I'm going to scoop it between my legs so my ribs get real close to my hips, and pull my shoulders down my back, and up. There we go, normal range of motion, right? So, starting to get it? All right. One more. Same thing. Everybody knows this guy, right? This is how everybody kicks. So use the front half of their back, their belly's sticking out, right? And they got this big dip. So if you have a posture problem, your butt's sticking out more than normal, it's called lordosis. So a lot of times on the site, I say, your butt's sticking out, or we're talking about butts. We're not actually talking about butts. We're talking about the lumbar spine. Now, if I stick my butt out and I hyperextend my knees, you'll realize you can hyperextend your knees because you're butt sticking out. When your butt's sticking out, your pelvis is tilted forward, and it's like a light switch. It turns off the access to your butt, right? So when I do that and I try to bring out my knee, you'll see it just stops, right? So my belly's sticking out, my hips tilted forward. That little 10 degrees tilt forward costs me another 30 degrees in range of motion, right? So how am I going to get rid of it? So I'm just going to do this little trick. Tell all my guys the same thing. You can do it at home, you can do it sitting down, you can do it anywhere. I want you to lift your heels off the ground, bend your knees a little bit. Now, if your butt's sticking out, I want you to do the opposite. I want you to slide your tailbone down the wall. Before, you could see a butt sticking out. Now you see a flat line, and if your back is in a flat line on the bottom, your butt should be flexed. Then you put your heels down and up, easy, 120 degrees. So when I say it all starts in the neutral hips, it does. And it's not just holding it for kicking and punting. What this site teaches you how to do turns you into a perfect athlete, because what do all perfect athletes have? Neutral hips. So integrated in kicking and punting, also integrated in the weight room. While you're sleeping properly, while you're standing, while you're sitting properly, everything. The site is amazing for kicking and punting. It's amazing for your body, and I'm glad you're here.